that sounds really interesting, to be in a space to figure out and kind of help define what the ecosystem is and how they can all work like harmoniously in a way. I was like, that sounds like an amazing challenge, and I want that.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. This episode of Long Run Labs is brought to you by Beehive, the email platform we've trusted for over 2 years to send our weekly newsletter. They just keep getting better, now with a brand new and no-code website builder and an ad network that helps you earn while you write. It's never been easier to grow your audience and also your revenue. The best part? You get a free 30-day trial and 20% off your first 3 months just for being a listener. Whether you're starting from scratch or ready to level up, this platform has your back, just like it has ours. Check out the link in the show notes to grab your discount and start building. We are back in Boulder, Colorado with Drew Hartman. Drew, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me over. It's great to see the setup and behind the scenes of all this.
Totally. Normally, I'm the one providing gifts to the guests, but today you brought Olipop, so I'm going to...
The runner's soda.
Open it up right here.
Hey, cheers to you. Long range.
Cheers.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Let's dive into it.
Great. Let's do it.
Who is Drew?
I'd like to... That's a big question. I would say the best way I could describe it quickly is a person who combines a passion for running with the profession of the running industry and hopefully building that in a social way, if that makes sense, as opposed to performance.
It does.
Okay.
I've known you through your work at Tracksmith, now Salomon. We both go back to the days of Boston, the Boston running scene, which is quite different than the Boulder running scene in its own special way. A lot of river loops versus mountain views.
True.
But yeah, again, the intent of this podcast is to tell the stories of the people building in the outdoor industry. Normally, we either talk only about running or only about business. And I just like the stories. I like people's stories. I like to understand what makes them tick. And I like to understand why they do things versus, staying on one side of that conversation or the other. So let's start on the running side.
Cool. Tell
me about Drew the runner.
Yeah. So I started running in probably middle school just to stay in shape for soccer. And that was my primary sport. I always wanted to play in college. And the stark reality of that was I graduated high school like 5'7", 115 pounds and trying to translate that into a soccer career doesn't necessarily
better soccer than football.
Very true. Yes. So I wouldn't say I had the most durable body at that time, but I started doing track when I was in high school, still very much with the intent of pursuing soccer. And when that was cut short in college, I started running a little bit more recreationally as a way to just feel good about how to spend some time, right? Like, it was something I could do on my own or with people, as opposed to when I wanted to play soccer, I had to get a few people together to
at least 4 to 5.
Yeah, I still played club soccer when I was in college, and it was a great way to stay like tethered to the game. But the role of running really just grew over that time, and I started doing some marathons. I ran my first one on my 21st birthday, ran the Hartford Marathon. I thought that would be a cool thing.
It's a non-traditional 21st birthday celebration.
Yeah, first legal beer in the beer tent. I finished about a third of it, and then I was like, I just want to go home. It was not enjoyable. Yeah, but I think during that time in my life, I was focused on this kind of bucket list approach to running, where I was like, oh, it would be cool to run 10 marathons before I turned 30. And that was kind of the extent of it. But I found over time that I fell in love more with the process of it instead of just checking those boxes. So my relationship evolved.
Why 10 marathons before 30?
I don't know. I thought it would be... So I knew I was going to start at 21 because I was like, I'm going to train for this race. It falls.
It's a very sustainable way to do it over a 9-year period.
And probably the only sustainable thing I've done in my life is like have that plan.
Yeah.
But I thought, I could do like one a year.
Well, you didn't put any guardrails around, like it had to be amortized over that period.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could have.
You could have done 10 at 29.
That's very true. So that was the plan. And my second marathon was on my 22nd birthday on the day, Chicago.
Tracking.
I know. And then I found it's really hard to find races to do on October 12th every year that I can afford to get to as a college student and then in grad school. So that's when I started getting a little bit more fluid of like how many I could do in a year or what my goals were with them. Because I definitely suffered more than flourished in those first few.
But you kept doing it.
Yeah, totally.
How come?
I think what kept bringing me back to it was kind of looking back to the soccer side of things, where I had one season in a summer where there was a lot of doubt around my development in soccer. And my coaches got really hard on me of like, hey, if you want to do something in the sport, like you have to put the time in, and kind of implying that like, we don't see that right now. And through that calendar year, just put in a ton of work on like the minutia of things. Like we just go outside and do like dribbling drills, which are boring, and would juggle the ball and just try to keep it up for as many times as possible. And I felt a similar kind of pull of like, you can focus on getting better over time and you can measure it, which felt really cool at the time.
It's cool how universal that approach to athletics is in so many sports that are both skill sports or endurance sports. I did a podcast with Scott Stallings, who's a PGA Tour champion, 3-time PGA Tour champion, and he had shoulder surgery or elbow surgery and got into running in the recovery process and ran Boston this past spring for his first marathon. And his take on it was super interesting in that he was like, playing golf for decades has prepared me to be a runner, right? It's like the same. If you do a thing consistently, you get better. If you practice your drive, if you practice your putting, if you practice this, if you do the miles, if you do the thing, like you just get better. And that's what is awesome to learn from excellent athletes, that it's just like the only secret is there's no secret.
Yeah, the joke that I enjoy, a friend, Will Baldwin, is also in this area. When some people feel like they're amazed by a certain person's performance, or even their own performance, or somebody in our friend group, he'll sarcastically say the punchline is like, you're telling me that person did the thing 5 or 6 days a week with replicability for several years, and they ran faster. Like, that's a joke he makes. Connor Martin makes that joke, but it's definitely predicated on that. It's like, well, the only way to do it is just volume over time. Yeah.
So that's kind of the genesis of this podcast, right? That the only way to be successful in running is to do it over and over and over again. The only way to be successful in business is to just like weather the storms and ride out the hard times. And surprise, there are tariffs. Surprise, there are taxes. Surprise, there like your inventory was destroyed. Like random things happen, and you have to be, oh, your hip hurts. Oh, your IT band is bothering you. Like there are things that are unknown, and it's not about like avoiding. My favorite line is like, it's not about avoiding the waves. It's about learning to surf.
I like that a lot.
I'm surfing right now with my IT band. So
are we injury buddies right now?
I hope not.
Oh man. So how long are you in your process and like coming back?
I mean, I ran a killer workout last Thursday and then got greedy and doubled, and I just haven't been doubling and
just put it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. I ran 8 miles today and felt great for 6 of it, but
awesome.
We'll see. I want to be healthy for Boulder on Monday. So
I know it's coming around the corner.
It is coming around the corner. So speaking of coming around the corner, when did business and the business of running enter the picture for you?
That's a good question. So when I went to undergrad, I went to Boston University. I knew at that time that I wanted to go to law school after that. And my thought was at the time, it'd be really cool to go into intellectual property. And I don't come from a science background, a hard science background. So the type of intellectual property that I would do would be copyrights, trademarks, trade dress, that kind of stuff. And then of course there's always some contract stuff around it. And I thought that kind of in 2 different ways. It'd be cool to work with like entrepreneurs in some way, because my parents are both visual artists and my brother's a composer. And I was thinking about how the mom and pop businesses oftentimes don't have the education or the resources to kind of protect what they create. So I thought that would be really cool. But then I was like, I really like sports as well. So it'd be really cool to be an attorney for like Nike or something. So
The dream, work for Nike.
well, at the time I was like, that's the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
It's the only way, right? They're one of the biggest sportswear brands that's always been at an arm's length of me or in my hand for years. So that was a goal going through it. But when I was in law school, I went to Northeastern. I went straight through. And I was very fortunate to do that, and very privileged to go through and have that experience back to back, because when I was out of law school, I was 24. And so I'm like very young in the grand scheme of things. But the thing was, when I did my co-op program, the internships that we would trade off with academic semesters, every attorney in the job I wanted was like in their late 40s, early 50s, just got the job they wanted. And
divorced.
Well, yeah, some of them said, I took this job because it would allow me to be around my kids more. And I thought that was amazing.
Oh, so the opposite.
And well, for the in-house role, because there's less work now. Yeah. But for me, it sparked so many questions. It was like, well, you just got the job you wanted. What were you doing prior? Yeah. And they're like, well, you got to work in big firms and show that you can do the thing. And like, there's often times that you go in-house after working as the outside counsel and all this stuff. And they're like, oh my God, it's cool that you get to spend more time with your kids. Like, how old are they? And they're like 18. Like, oh. So you start doing the mental math, or at least I was at the time. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to put in 10 to 15 years to do that with the hope of like entering the funnel of where I want to be.
Right.
So then it was a shift in being like, I guess the important thing here is the sports or the athletic side. So let's figure out that part of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a way to back into it for sure.
And what was your first role in the space?
So my first role in the outdoor industry was customer service at Tracksmith.
Got it.
So I started full-time September 3rd, 2019 with them. And
while living in Boston.
Yeah, while living in Boston. Yep. So I stayed through after graduating in 2017. I, at that time, started firing off applications to get into the outdoor industry.
Yep.
To, Puma, Reebok, Saucony, all of these spaces in Boston, and got nothing back. Nothing. Like, we'll keep it on file or whatever, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to be there. And
there's no AI to write the resume.
Yeah, and there's also no AI to filter me out too. But with that, I was like, dang, I really need to like zero in and try to figure out what I can do to grow the skill set. So I took a job at Toast, the restaurant POS company, and I was a project manager there from the first job out of law school until I entered it at Tracksmith.
I think your entry is interesting because you were just like, I got to get in. I got to get in the ground floor. I know there's a lot of discussion. We're both fairly active in the Second Nature Slack. Anybody who's listening to this would love Second Nature. There's my royalty, Dylan and Aaron. $1, please. And anyone who's listening to this podcast would love that one. But there's a lot of discussion in that jobs thread about like, how do I get into the industry? How do I do this? And it's like, it's kind of similar to what you were saying about law. Like, you kind of have to start at the bottom sometimes if you don't have the relevant experience, but you can work your way up. And so that's what you did at Tracksmith, right?
Yeah. The step that preceded that was while I was working at Toast, I was working nights and weekends at Tracksmith doing like part-time retail and community stuff. So I was going to the run clubs already. I knew they were always looking for people to kind of fill up some shifts. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so I would leave one job, go to the other one, and found a lot of joy getting to know that space. And my thought at the time was, this company is small. The offices are 2 floors above the retail store. So there's a good chance that I'm going to be able to know who like the players are. And even at that time, I was like, who knows? Maybe could be an attorney for this brand.
Right.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. But what evolved over time is after I ran Grandma's Marathon in the spring of 2019, I got a tip from my retail manager at the time, Jeff Silas, who we both know. And Jeff said there was a job opening that was coming up and they don't hire often. He's like, it might not be a job you're interested in on paper, but he's like, it's a great way to get into this company and it doesn't happen too often. And again, I'll say super privileged to say that I was 24 years old, or at that time I was older, right? Had a few more years since graduating. But to be that age at that time, being able to take that risk, like financially and all of those things, I mean, it was very much of the time that I could do that.
Yeah. I think risk taking, if you have the chance to take risks, you owe it to yourself to do it. I'm quitting my job in 2 weeks and I'm going all in on this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
By the time this episode airs, I will have
Whoa,
quit.
that's so cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just like, again, like I had that conversation with a mentor of mine who's basically like, okay, let's say you make a mistake and 3 months later, like you're not going to be homeless. You'll be able to pay your bills. Like I assume you have some sort of savings. I assume that may have been a similar situation for you. And it's like in the grand scheme of things, what is 3 months of lost wages if you are in a position where you can do it with the upside of, well, what could happen if you bet on yourself, if you go on, if you take that job that's a foot in the door kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it.
I'm really risk averse. I will say that. So it took a lot to make that decision. And one thing I had to do, I guess, more practically was think about like, all right, I'm going to take a pay cut to come here.
Yep.
And I don't know the rate of growth here as opposed to other companies.
Right.
So at that time I was like, all right, I want to do this. This is exactly what I want, but I should look into like, all right, time to get some roommates again.
Right.
So I like moved into a track shack. I moved in with like 3 other people, 2 of which, one of them was Jeff, my former retail manager at that point. Another one was friend Jared Ikevelli, who you know as well, who's from the Heartbreakers, but big in the running scene as well. And we moved into his place. And it was a way that I was like, I know I'm safe right now doing this. Yeah. And hopefully it will blossom the way I hope it does.
And it did.
It definitely did. Yeah.
Kind of like springboarded your career.
For sure.
So what happens next?
Yeah. So I was employee, I think 16 at Tracksmith. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But I started in that space. Within a few weeks of starting, I was, the customer service side of things. So learning all the systems of like taking phone calls and being on instant chat and doing the email responses for things, whether it was recommending products or people were even writing and asking for like workout advice sometimes because they were like, hey, I saw this one photo shoot that
what a wild thing to do on a live chat,
right? And some people are like, oh, what workout did they do in that thing? And I would be like, I want to know too. So I would ask our creative team, like, what did you put them through? And they would be like, oh, that was a 4-mile tempo, and then there's like this afterwards. So
Rollinsville. It was Rollinsville.
Yeah. So I was doing that, but within 2 weeks of starting, they were like, hey, we do this thing called pop-ups here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And it was Chicago Marathon. They told us like, hey, we're going to go there. We're going to get a space that is not in the expo. And the whole point of this is for us to create our own environment for people to enter and shop and come to events and kind of be transported into a space that feels like our store just happened to open up in this city.
The Newbury Street before the Newbury Street.
Yeah. Well, at that point, like the store was open.
I just mean like the way that the Boston Marathon in particular, but this was not Boston.
Great point.
Yeah.
Yes. So going into that space, I was like, yeah, it sounds really cool. So that was the first thing I did. I was like, this is really amazing. And you're like, you mean you guys are going to pay for my flight to go somewhere? Like that was even foreign to me. And then they came back to me and they're like, do you want to do New York? I was like, yeah, I want to do New York. Cool. So like get an Airbnb in Chinatown and like walk to the Lower East Side of Rolling Blazers. We're going to do it all again.
Yeah.
And then coming off that, I was like, I think I really like this. Can I do it more often? And they said, sure. And mind you, this is turning the corner into 2020.
Yeah.
So the plans at the time were, cool, we're going to go to
Atlanta.
We're going to Atlanta. We're going to do a pop-up for the launch of the amateur sport program for the marathon trials. And then after that, we have 2 weeks in Tokyo booked and a month-long stint in London where you'll be staying and running a store. And obviously it all evaporated.
Yeah.
And it was
you got Atlanta, right?
Yes, got to Atlanta. But then when we got back, it was kind of like, hey, cancel all your stuff. Like, we'll figure this out. Obviously, everyone had to, go from there. But that was the acceleration into like the experiential side. I'm like, oh, I really like that part for sure.
Okay, so March 2020 happens.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with sponsorship of my podcast.
Yeah.
The reason that happened was a brand called Wigwam. They make socks. And they were like, we were sponsoring races, but now there are no races. Like, can we talk to your audience? And so the first episode I launched with them was the episode I did with Shalane Flanagan. And it was like my second virtual podcast. And I vividly remember the feedback from the brand. Wigwam, Synchronet by Wigwam is the name of the company. I still wear the socks. They're fantastic. Talk about sustainability. When you have a product and you can wear it for 5+
Yeah.
years instead of it degrading
Yeah.
within a year. I still have all my Tracksmith stuff too.
Amazing.
Anyway, and a 10-year-old Nathan vest.
There you go.
And anyway, the feedback was, and I was like, great episode. Audio quality was not very great. And so like I was just trying to figure out how to do these virtual episodes. But that was my first experience with sponsorship. And I was like, wow, somebody wants to pay me to talk about their product? I love these products. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
You were on the brand side at the time. How did you think about that pivot? And sort of, we talked about, everybody has a plan to get punched in the face. We got punched in the face repeatedly, over and over and over again that spring.
Yeah, there's a lot of really smart minds making those decisions, and I was just happy to be in like the orbit of them at the time. And there's a lot of, gut decision making and a lot of educated guessing for sure as it related to every aspect of the business, right? So, people doing operations and e-com had to adjust. People doing experiential, people doing content had to adjust as well. Even the way that we were running like Meter magazine, right, operationally changed in the way that Andy was doing that. So the shift that I saw on my side with like the customer experience side was, I don't know if they ever publicly said this, but Tracksmith didn't furlough their retail employees because it wasn't their choice. Like they kept them on the payroll and they're like, hey, if you want more hours, let's pour it into customer service because there's so much that's going on right now. We need to match the appetite that people are having once they were returning to safe activity outside. And I kind of took that as the opportunity to think like it would be great for us to make sure that although these folks know the brand super well, that they understand the processes and kind of the language and how we speak in a more formal context, especially when it's like in the written form as opposed to just like conversational. So I started training all of our retail folks on customer service, and we developed that program to take on more people because before the shift, we were a customer service team of 2. It was Eric Ash and myself. And coming out of it, it was like, I think we can scale this if it's of interest, right? And then we built a team out from 2 to I think 6 by the time I shifted over fully to like marketing, to the marketing team at Tracksmith. So that was a big adjustment on that side, keeping up with everything the business was doing because everything's a reference point when we're living in the vacuum. So when we would put out content, people would want to talk about the content to the customer service team, and we had to make sure that they're up to date on it, let alone the product things. We had a press release with Mary Kate and Nick Willis joining. People want to talk about that. So it was a lot of finding these brand moments and figuring out the ways to disseminate it internally. That was, I think, a really good challenge and how to like build a toolkit through it.
And so when did the switch to marketing happen?
Yeah. So when I was still in the customer service space, I was managing the team at that point. Everybody we hired was not in Boston. We were still not in the office. We were still remote. So I asked my boss at the time if I could move away from Boston because that team was remote as well. And then I went back to law school in my head and I was like, I have my plan A, my plan B, my plan C for my negotiation. And I went to plan A and I was like, I'd love to, move to Boulder with my fiance or girlfriend at the time, now fiance. And I can come back for like these reasons if it's needed. But, I was expecting to say no. And then we would go from there. And he was like, that's fine. So I moved out to Boulder in 2021 while still managing the team. Fast forwarding a little bit, there were some photo shoots that we did out here. And at the time I was feeling this like gravitational pull back towards the experiential side. I was still doing some stuff with it, going to pop-ups, but I'm like, that's the thing I want to get back to. And I had a conversation with the CEO who was out here for a photo shoot. So I asked Matt Taylor for like 10 or 15 minutes of his time. He
probably thought you were going to quit.
I hope that's not what he thought. Or maybe if he did, that would be like the best, like, oh, okay, we're fine. You know? But we sat down and I talked to him. I was like, I think I want to do this within the company. I really love it. And I'm gravitating towards it. And he asked me one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. He was like, I totally understand that. I appreciate your passion for it. Do you want to do those things like for their inherent value because you're gravitating towards it? Or are you just kind of like done with what you're doing now? And I was like, whoa, I got to really, because I'm like, how do I respond in a way that like instills confidence on both sides, right? Of like, if you say no, that you can trust that I'm still going to do the job. But if you say yes, that you know that there's real reason.
How did you answer?
I think I said that my focus for the last 2 years or whatever at that time has been building a sustainable structure for the customer experience team that just didn't exist.
Right.
Like we built an onboarding practice from scratch. We were finding ways to do these, making internal tools and all of these different systems and processes. And I was like, now that I've made them, I can say with confidence that these can be run by other people.
Yep.
And I'm confident in that. But the thing that I always enjoyed from day one was the connection with that ultimate person. The thing that I said to him was like, I've been in customer experience for the entirety of my time here. I feel like I know this customer really well and all the variations of who they can be.
Great point.
Right? Because I'm talking to them 6 hours a day actively.
When they're having problems.
Exactly. And sometimes there's some great write-ins and people want to celebrate their wins that we get to celebrate with them too. But I know how they speak and how they think and their variations to them. And then I get to see them in person and I get to have these points where people remember me from the email, quote unquote. And I want that. And he wildly just goes, hang out for a little bit. Trust me, I'll work on this. And that was a discussion in like January. And in February, he came to me and was like, okay, there's an opportunity for you to join Lee Glandorf's team.
Yep.
And she's the head of marketing at Tracksmith. That's the opportunity if you're ready. And I was like, done deal. And that was amazing to learn under Lee for sure.
I've chatted with Matt a bunch of times and he just seems like a fantastic leader and has a really smart head on his shoulders. I've interacted with Lee a bunch of times through our partnership on For the Long Run that was like 3 years ago. My God.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay, you make this switch.
Yeah.
You take a gamble of
bet
like,
the farm. Yeah.
you bet the farm like, oh, I'm tired of my job. I want a new job to the CEO.
Mm-hmm. Tough choice.
Choice. Yeah. You didn't say it in that way, but that was,
sure,
he was kind of curious if that's what you were saying without saying, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So there's a lesson in that. Again, take risks, take chances. In this moment, in this instance, it worked out.
Yeah.
What did the first 90 days look like after switching teams?
It was a lot of excitement because I've admired the people that I got closer to. So Lee Glandorf, head of marketing, I got closer to her as her direct report. I got closer to Andy Waterman, who's the former head of content at Tracksmith. Got closer to Rafa, who's the head of creative at the time as well. So all of that information that I respected within the business, I was like, oh, I get to be in the room more often. And to me, that was so cool. So I was just there to absorb as much as possible. What ended up happening in the first 30 days is I went to LA every week or every other week to do our first LA activation. And that was the first boots on the ground. And I was like, okay, like I said I wanted to do it and you guys said, go do it. And it was really cool. It was a challenge because not only was it, putting myself on the ground there and then working with the team to make sure that for the first time I've had to think about the 360 of it. Who are we talking to from a partnership perspective before we show up? We're talking about venues that we need to secure, even just the communication plan. So it was a lot of like drinking through a fire hose, but it was like practical. And I'm very fortunate for that because if it was too academic or too heady or I wasn't...
Not enough actual doing.
Right. And if I wasn't faced with the consequences of like, if you don't do these things and you show up in LA and no one's there, like...
You're screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know that wouldn't have happened, but that was a really cool learning experience by doing for that. And then once I got back, it was... even figuring out like the email structure and how to put people, who do we talk to put them in the right, email flow. I've never thought about that before.
Right.
So yeah, it was a lot of like figuring out the mechanics of that in the moment. And then afterwards it was focusing on like replicable programs. So we started our first ambassador program pretty much right after that, going into the Boston Marathon. And that was another big lift. Like it was kind of blockbuster after blockbuster.
So this isn't like, I hesitate to call it like the heyday of Tracksmith, but I think I'm going to call it the heyday of Tracksmith. You can call it that. You'd like that, I'm sure.
I feel like I think there's a lot of folks have like opinions about the peak or the pinnacle of a brand, right? And I know that there is a lot of like, I have a lot of great memories from my time there, but I definitely can resonate when people say I felt most aligned with whatever brand at whatever time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Like 21 through 23 with Tracksmith. There weren't a lot of these new brands in the space. Right now it's, you have Satisfy, you have Say Sky, you have, everything in the Bandit, all these other options. At the time it was like Tracksmith or Nike, Wazelle.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Kind of like not like big players or Tracksmith.
Yeah.
Or Wazelle. And it's interesting because Wazelle is having
Janji too. Don't forget Janji.
Yeah,
right? We got to talk
Pride
about
of Austin.
Yes.
Janji has been the like silent player throughout all of it. That's just like a little steam engine that's just rolling on and like really crushing it lately.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Mike on this podcast as well. Mike is somebody in the industry I've respected I've known Mike since 2013.
Yeah.
Right when Janji was beginning, and to see what he's done and what that crew has done over the years has been really cool. But anyway, it definitely felt like there was a heyday of Tracksmith 21, 23. So when you're in that moment, are you thinking like, hey, these are the good times? This is like, and I'm not bashing Tracksmith of 2025.
No.
I'm being,
it's for my journey, right? Yeah, totally. I think, dude, the best way to say it during that time were like my heyday time, right?
Sure.
Like my crescendo towards 2024 when I ultimately left that.
Yeah. But it's not just your crescendo. It's like the perception, at least from where I sit, is that that's both yours and the brands, and they're trying to revitalize. Or if I ask Nick right now, like maybe he would disagree with everything I'm saying. Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know.
But was I aware of like what it was? I definitely. So it's twofold, right? I have my opinion when I was like in it, and then I have my opinion kind of looking back.
Yeah.
And when I was in it, everything that we were working on, it was so close to it that everything we did felt monumental. Whether it was a product launch, whether it was a photo shoot, whether it was...
Or like hundreds of people running a race or thousands of people running a race in the Tracksmith kit.
Even like rolling out something like the Twilight 5000, right? I remember doing the first one. And when we did the first Twilight 5000, we didn't call it that, but essentially the first version was hand-timed popsicle sticks, and like that's how we did it. We did it on the Esplanade because it was like we could do it for free.
Right.
We paid for timing and everything. But I talked to somebody recently about this. I'm like, if a larger brand did that approach today, people would be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Or they're like, "Why am I here?"
Right.
So there's definitely expectations that grow with you. So at the time, people felt like, "Wow, we're growing with this brand," because the next year we did it at the MIT track. We did it at Steinbrenner. And people are like, whoa, they're stepping it up.
Yeah.
And then the next year, we're like, we're going to do it in 2 cities. And people
Fenway
are like, whoa.
Park.
Yeah. And then we rolled it out to 8 cities and like did multiple. And people were like, whoa, this is crazy. Yeah. And then each time it was able to grow. And like, there's a lot of people to credit there. Lou Serafini was one of the main brains behind how that grew. And while I was in it, I was like, this growth feels magnetic, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. When I look back, I think I want to definitely acknowledge like the blinders I had on for other brands that were doing great work in their own lane. I think at the time I was looking at it and being like, well, yeah, they're like a big brand. Of course they can do that. Not realizing the extent of the effort that everybody has to put in to do that stuff.
Right.
So I think I look back on it and say like, yeah, that was a really cool time to be there. And I'm glad that I was. But I can definitely say like, yeah, in 2025, I look at the folks who are still there. There are definitely personnel changes that, a few of us are not there anymore. And to me, it kind of feels like eras, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So I can understand what you're saying for sure.
So at what point did you decide it's time to make a change? And this is the piece that I'm like
trying to figure out,
obsessed with, like the breaking stasis, right? You'd been there for a number of years and it was comfortable, but also challenging. But your team, the customer, the place. You make a decision to go into trail running.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can obviously look at this with like a more clear beginning and end now, right? At the time, I think there were like little micro movements of things that I could say, I was like, oh, I don't know if I agree with something that we're doing, or I want to do more and I'm not being given that, right? I think everybody can have that experience everywhere. But probably the best way I could say it is in a startup environment like Tracksmith, like a Bandit, like a Hermanos Komori, right? All of these different brands. They're amazing places to learn a lot because you go super wide.
Right.
And at the time, I was reporting directly to the brand president who sits under the CEO. The work that I was doing definitely supported everything that we were doing as a brand, but I wouldn't say that I had direct mentorship or the way that I can assess how I was growing and how quickly. It was just very incremental because I was so busy doing the work that was right in front of me. I wasn't thinking about larger.
What were your KPIs?
Schemes. Oh, my KPIs there. Oh man. I feel like if I had metrics in that space, it was like mainly based on the efficiency of the go-to-market process that I had to build. And as long as like the trains ran on time and we got things out, everything was a data point where we can improve it.
Yeah.
And just making sure that I can like smooth the handoff and identify like this process is like really excruciating. Why? And we have to like motivationally interview people to figure out what they're willing to do and what they won't. And then we can like iterate on the process.
Did you feel that could have been tweaked or changed, that like if the end zone was established in a different way or illuminated in a different way, and you had a intentionality of achieving that, it would have changed something?
Potentially. I think, right, like having a clearer path, I definitely recognize I respond well to those things of like, if I can achieve it, I know what it is and I can act to it or otherwise. I think the thing that started sitting with me most is I wanted to do more creative things. And I didn't have the mentorship just like structurally. And that's just not like a knock on certain people. Small brand. Yeah. Everyone's doing their best to like just get the work out the door. And for example, I set this amorphous goal in my mind. I'm like, I would love to be a marketing director one day, and finally had the confidence to like say that out loud. And I was like, well, how am I going to get there? There's so much I don't know. Yeah. Right. Like we were working together on podcast and media sides of it. And I knew the way that we interacted, but in terms of like, I don't know performance marketing. Right. I don't really have an interest in it personally, but but you know, like if I want to be a marketing director, I should have like a better sense of how to do that stuff. And like doing massive budgets or, you know, this and that, I just don't. So I can either try to learn all of that incrementally, stack the Lego bricks over the next like 7 years and hopefully no one slots in above me. Right. Or I need to go somewhere where I'm going to have like the structure, the mentorship, the resources and all of that right now. So that's when I started like head up looking around of like, I know what I want now. And I think my timeline is not correlating with the timeline here.
So what did you do about it?
Well, I brought it up internally, right? Of just being like, is there a way that we can figure out a way for me to learn and like kind of move into that space and take up space? And I will give a lot of credit to my fiance, Kayla, who you know as well, where she was really pushing me to say like, this is all you know. You have to like pull your head up for a second and just know there's other things out there. And it could be a no, it could be a not now, but keeping your head down and saying it's only here is not going to do you any favors. So in that sense, I started, you know, looking around at a few different opportunities that sat in the marketing space, sitting within running. And one of the things I had to contend with, which I talk about this often, is, right, I have the privilege of being here and working remote. The other thing that I would say is we had a conversation. We're like, are we ready to leave Boulder? Because a lot of these big brands, right, they're going to have you move to the Pacific Northwest. Portland. Or even Boston, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, are you ready for either of those? And it's an us decision. And we were like, not yet. So it definitely shaped the options that we considered. And the coolest thing, this is a cool full circle moment, and I'll stop rambling, but the first person I hired in customer service at Tracksmith was Richard Isa. And he had since moved on. He was at Salomon. And while I was doing my job search, he sent me this job rec. And he said, I think he like texted me and he goes, yo, I don't know like what you're doing these days, but we keep in touch. But he was like, I don't know what you're doing professionally these days, but like, if you want to come over, this has to be it. And I was like, done. Amazing. Yeah. I looked at everything it was. I'm like, that's the work that I've been begging for. So I thought about like my relationship to that brand, and it does sit on my like Rushmore of places to be.
Hi, friends. Are you enjoying this episode? That's great. Would you do us a favor? Copy the episode link in your podcast player and share it over on LinkedIn with one thing that you're enjoying about the conversation. This is a new show, and we can't wait to continue to grow this new platform. Doing this will help more people find the podcast and make sure it's all sustainable. Thanks in advance, and enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Superfiliate, the affiliate platform I've been recommending for years. Look, I've worked with just about every affiliate platform out there, from both on the brand side and on the creator or partner side, and Superfiliate is hands down the easiest one I've ever used. From setup to tracking to payouts, it just works. No clunky dashboards, no confusing workflows, just clean, simple tools that help you drive results. If you're a brand looking to scale partnerships, Superfiliate makes it so easy to launch and grow your affiliate program. And most importantly, get buy-in and action from your partners. Take it from me. Empower your customers and creators with co-branded landing pages with their own user-generated content. Provide cash and store credit rewards, gifts, and much more. If you're tired of overcomplicated and unnecessarily expensive platforms, do yourself a favor and check out superfiliate.com. That's superfiliate.com and tell them I sent you. I'm happy to make a connection as well. So you join the company, you go through the process, you join the company, and now you're a trail guy.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit of an everything guy now as a result, right?
Yeah.
Because like I sit in so technically the title for right now is Manager of Sports and Community Marketing.
Got it.
And that extends across just general performance. So trail running, like the legacy that built Salomon in the running space. Obviously Winter Sports built Salomon in the beginning. Then road running, which they had road athletes before I was even there. And then this new category that I heard about during my interview process that they wanted to push into gravel. And
running.
Yeah, gravel running.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that sounds really interesting to be in a space to figure out and kind of help define what the ecosystem is and how they can all work like harmoniously in a way. And I was like, that sounds like an amazing challenge and I want that. So yeah, I think a little bit of everything for sure.
So you've been there a year now? I just saw you posted a 1 year update.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest surprise over that 1 year period?
Yeah, I think there's like external and internal surprise, where external surprise for me is kind of relating the same way that I was back at Tracksmith and had to understand who the multiple customer profiles are, right? Who interacts with this brand naturally, and then who's like the aspiration for the brand to interact with. Right. It's the same thing for Salomon, where there's even more legacy and there's even more expectation, and being in the field and being like, let me just observe. I went to Broken Arrow as my first event as an observer to say like, I just want to see how we show up and I want to see how people, what they expect from us and how we execute. And that's what I'm here for. And then the internal surprise for myself is for the better, the bureaucracy side of things. Like, I, in April, was in Annecy, France at the global headquarters, and we were being briefed in on the big moments of 2026 in spring. And that's just the way they work. Whereas that's a wildly different timeline than I had at Tracksmith. So it was just an adjustment in that first year to be like, hey, you need to start planning, plant your seeds now, because by the time you want to start cultivating, they have to be sprouted.
And you also work with the greatest athlete of all time, Courtney Dauwalter.
Yes. Yes. That was a surreal moment. So within that first, 3 months or whatever, I went to Hard Rock and supported our content team that was there. And they were doing a film on, the women that were competing. So it was Camille Brias, it was Courtney Dauwalter, Francois Den was there. And then also they were being supported by athletes like Marianne Hogan, who's in Boulder currently right now before going to Western States. And interacting with those personalities for the first time, it felt larger than life. I mean, I grew up on Salomon TV. That was when I was in college figuring out what running was. I was watching Salomon TV in a concrete city of Boston, kind of aspiring to like the places and the people and the ability. So it was really cool to be full circle.
And those athletes were competing at that time too, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe not Camille, right? But like Francois and Courtney, right? Yeah. Like I know who those people were. And the idea that I probably freaked out that both of them when I'm staring at them at an aid station, they're just trying to they're just trying to get watermelon in.
Courtney is the funniest. Like I went on a 2-hour run with her in Leadville, and it's probably the peak of my athletic performance that I did 2 hours with Courtney in Leadville. Yeah. But it was like she was asking me all the questions.
Yeah.
And like that's the cool thing about these athletes, that they're such real humans. They're not divas. They're not in it for themselves. And again, your role is community. These people are community to their core. So how does the brand leverage somebody like Courtney? How does the brand leverage someone like that who is like has hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, big enough to be on Joe Rogan? Like, how do you humanize them and how do you leverage them in a way that is effective?
Yeah, well, I have some amazing counterparts at the global team in Annecy, and we chat together, we collaborate to like make that possible. And also when you have somebody like Courtney, for example, in addition to so many of the athletes we work with who have no problem kind of expressing what they want to do, it's super cool because then we can match the wants of somebody like Courtney with business goals and like community things. So there's kind of it's a twofold thing, because there's the digital side of community where we have the ability for people to want to follow along with Courtney, for example, on social. And then we have the ability to produce documentaries where people can, you know, revisit those moments in time, like the Triple Crown, a film they made on Salomon TV. But then there's the side of like, how do you connect it to people in person? And honestly, that's a huge challenge, because even something like capacity and access to that person is something that I think about for both parties. So for example, we're planning something with Courtney to have an in-person activation. And I'm talking to this partner who I'm not naming yet, just given the time of everything. But for this in-person side of things, there's going to be a group run. And my thought is I want to make sure those people can have a moment with Courtney that's digestible.
So you don't want 500 people showing up.
Right. And yeah, for runner safety, because Courtney's racing a lot. Like this is training at a high level.
In Tahoe?
This will be in a different time. So different place, different timing. But it's keeping like the runner safe.
Sure.
It's making sure that people can ask the questions they want, get them answered, and have the moment where they feel like they're kind of a part of the same fabric. So there are people at much larger brands, like, I mean, the Nikes of the world with a huge roster, and the Hokas of the world with a huge roster that have that challenge regularly. And that's of a lot of interest to me. But it's a good question, John.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like, because I've been to some of these group runs where it's hundreds of people. And the way to dispel that is like you have 5 elite athletes at it. Or like I did one with Puma at the San Francisco Marathon last summer, and we must have had 500 people show up. And
Super
it was Molly Seidel, Jenna Prandini, Alex Toussaint, Charlie Lawrence, a guy named Justin Williams, who's like a community builder.
From Unseen.
Exactly, yeah. I think he'll be in Tahoe.
Yeah,
he'll be at TrailCon.
Yeah, I've known him for a few years.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a Broken Arrow as well.
Cool.
Racing, yeah.
I got to get him on I meant to get him on for the long run.
Yeah.
I need to get him on.
He's a good dude.
One of the 2 podcasts. But anyway, like star-studded roster of 5 people. But what was really funny was that everybody was going up to Alex. But you have 2 Olympians there.
Yeah.
But they diversified. Like, not everyone was going to go take selfies with Molly. They had all these. Anyway, so that's definitely one approach if you want a very large event. But yeah, I can imagine that there's some need to, you know, keep things smaller sometimes.
Yeah.
One aspect that I love talking about, the dichotomy or the difference between brand and performance marketing. You sit on the brand marketing side now. How, when it comes to athlete sponsorship, we're hearing these stories of the Ultras of the world, the Salomons of the world, signing $1 million contracts with trail runners. What is the calculus and calculation behind how that's happening? And do you think that we're going to continue to see those salaries continue to rise in this era of like running is having another moment?
Yeah.
And more people are doing it, and more people are able to do it professionally and pay their bills. And not just pay their bills, but live well.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think this is a point where I'll say, like, you know, these are my personal opinions, right? Like, I don't represent the company
The
here,
opinions reflected here do not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the lawyer in you.
Right. I think that's important for me to say, because I guess my opinion of things is we're in like a kind of a primordial soup at all times when it comes to like the economy of athletes and influencers. And I know it's a conversation topic. It's very
we
hot
should get
to
into
talk
that
about
too.
that. Yeah. But in the same way that it relates to like these large contracts, I think the factors at play that influence, let's say, trail in particular, right? Because we have some great road athletes as well in the space. But for Courtney's recent deal that a lot of people have talked about, right? It's one of these blockbuster deals that you're mentioning. I think it's influenced by, right, legacy to the brand for sure, right? The potential for this person to not only connect from a performance basis, but a personality basis, and the way that person can kind of run the gamut of who can connect to them. That's just like an X factor of who that person is, in addition to, the podium performance side of things. But then there's also the external influence of like, we're seeing athletes come in from like the road scene where historically there's been more money in road, and those people are coming over to trail, and it kind of stirs things up a bit. And then we're in a place where the influencer, let's say the cost of working with influencers has ballooned. So that kind of influences this thing as well, because I don't know, I think if you look at an athlete, and I'll say Courtney, since we're talking about her, she is legacy to the Salomon brand. She has the ability to connect from a performance perspective and a personality perspective to so many people. She has wants and desires and needs in this sport and what she wants from it, and like in the future as well, which is really cool for the longevity that she'll have from the impact of the sport. And then if that person can speak to the person who is core to the sport, but also the person who's going to come into it for the first time.
So like potentially wild. A back of the pack, middle of the packer versus the tip of the spear performance oriented person.
Yeah. And it also, in addition to like, the ranges of performance from the front to the back of the pack, it's also the person who might be approaching trail for the first time, right? They could be core in running, in not in the sense that they're like winning races, but the fact that they do it with regularity, and now they want to try this new modality of it. Who would I want to welcome them into that space to say, no, you could do this too. It's actually like, it's something you might enjoy. I'd want Courtney to do that.
So what is it about Courtney that and I'm not asking as like let's keep hyping Courtney up. We should keep hyping Courtney up, but I'm asking more to be prescriptive around like, what is the type of athlete that is universally loved and like seemingly doesn't have haters and can be accepted by everyone? Like, how do you build that?
Yeah. Well, I think so much of it is inherent to the person, right? And there is a coachability element to things. And I'm not saying that this is the way that like Courtney is like formed in a lab or anything like that, but
no, but she's like very like, this is just who she is.
Yeah.
But like, what is the DNA of somebody that is like that brands could look for?
Yeah. I think there's definitely like, I don't want to over-index on like the term of loyalty, right? Because it's just not reasonable for athletes to expect athletes to be one brand for their entire career. That's like, this is an anomaly.
Yeah. Like, or like a Sally McRae with Nike.
Yeah. So I think loyalty is definitely like a brand and athlete finding that common fabric is super important for sure. And then the way that person represents the brand, not only, visually and out in races, but the way that person can talk about the brand and their values and the products and the innovation, I think is super valuable for an athlete to represent that in a like an elevated way and in a personal way.
Yep.
And then I guess I would also say that somebody, like a Courtney is, I don't know, brings a lightness to the sport where there's intensity. There's the dichotomy, right? There's so much intensity in the way that Courtney approaches the inner self and what she expects from herself and how she like pushes herself. But when I saw
like
her
playful.
Yeah. And then it's like, it's a playful element in the way that people can approach her. And even in the way that like we were filming and the way that she expressed herself when she needed more space and be like, hey guys, like I'm going to come through this aid station quickly as a way to be like, maybe it's not a undershot as I'm, putting water in my face. Like, cool, that's playful. Let's keep it moving, Not to say that she doesn't have down times, but I think there's a really nice, that it almost makes the performance approachable because of the way that person inherently views themselves in sport.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, you tugged on a couple of topics there that I love to talk about. Okay. Obviously, the influencer, athlete, creator discussion. You're at a big brand. You've been at a smaller brand than Salomon. How are you thinking about the use of influencers, the use of athletes as influencers, the use of athletes in a athletic performance standpoint? Like, how do you reconcile all of that with the thought that like everybody thinks they're an influencer now at the same time?
Yeah, I would say when you and I were in Boston at the same time, and like, you know, we're going to November Project and like Tracksmith long runs and stuff. The term of influencer was being like used as like a monolith of like somebody who has an online presence.
Right.
And then now there's so many segmentations inside of it. So now we're using terms like nano influencer.
Right.
So it definitely like evolves over time.
I mean, like my history with the phrase is I built a brand ambassador program for a company in 2012 and influencers and ambassadors, like this was still like an extremely novel thing at that time. And you know, a mom in Florida would post a discount code and it would do $2,000 of sales for $100 AOV product and like 20 sales instantly.
Right.
And the attribution was clean. The awareness was straight and concise. There was a reaction for every action. You knew what was happening.
Sure.
You could attribute it.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everybody else caught on or things evolved.
Sure.
And we're in this like, you know, there are businesses that are aimed at calculating attribution in a 10-stage model.
Totally.
Now. So like, how are you thinking about it with that lens?
Yeah. Well, I know you and I both like talked about the concept of like the messy middle, right? Where like the whole idea of a funnel of purchase from like awareness to consideration to conversion is not really the case anymore.
Right. It's not linear.
It's not linear. And there's this like middle where people...
it's multimodal.
Right. And like people kind of navigate these, you know, stormy waters of decision making before they ultimately make that decision. So that's definitely a factor in like the complexity of the conversation. And I would argue that since there is a messy middle, there's a reason and a rationale to work with all of these folks. And it's just about placing like targeted bets at times where I think it is dependent on like it's the end customer profile, where if we're thinking, let's say it's driven by, this is a brand only thing. We want people to consider the brand more so than the products they create. What are we creating from an environmental perspective for people to want to be a part of that?
So like a feeling.
Yeah. And it's like, do we want somebody to have that touch point digitally or in person? And who is the best person to articulate that message? And that'll kind of dictate the direction we go. Or is it like, okay, we're telling a product story. Who's going to tell that product story the best and the most accessible way? Because there are ways to convey that message in multiple ways. Like the whole idea of an aspirational product doesn't have to be spoken to, like told to somebody through the lens of an athlete, because aspiration, I think proven by some brands like Tracksmith, Bandit, Oiselle, aspiration could be innate to a person themselves. You don't have to see somebody on the podium.
Mile.
Yeah. So it is, I think, ultimately related to like, all right, who's going to be touching this and who's the primary audience? And then what's kind of like the diverted use that comes out of it or like dissipates.
I love the like find the customer first, find that first. So I've been doing a lot of sponsorship development for athletes and podcasts. And the way I've been approaching it is like, well, who's the audience of the podcast? And what are the things that they're buying? What are the things that they're doing? What are the things that they want to do? So like the most successful partnership so far has been Boulderthon with a couple of like niche running podcasts focused on like amateurs who care a lot. Like those are the people that want an excuse to go to Boulder and to come run a race here and do Boulderthon. Or like, you know, you think about the demographics of runners. It's akin to tennis or golf. So why aren't banks, why aren't, you know, financial services firms sponsoring professional athletes and letting them talk about financial health and letting them talk about, hey, I care a lot about mental health, I care a lot about physical health, but I'm getting paid on a monthly basis or whatever it is. Like, I should care about that too, because that's what the audience cares about. So I think the aligning versus like, these are the products that we use for the thing versus these are the things that I use in my everyday life as a 34-year-old male who lives in Boulder. There's a lot of discovery that can be done in the matching of products and services and brands to the audience of the athlete. Yeah.
And the challenge I think that comes with that is the larger the brand, the more on-ramps exist to that brand.
Right.
So at Tracksmith, there were, let's say, fewer on-ramps because smaller company, let's say a more focused approach on the way they represent themselves because it's singular sport for the most part. And it was originally through the lens of apparel. And the brand story was like airtight at the time, right? Whereas people finding Salomon might know it from winter sports. They might know it from trail. They might know it from road.
Yeah.
And they also might know it in the way that people are adopting sports style and the fashion side of things and trying to figure out.
Was it Gorpcore?
Gorpcore is how it launched, but even that, like the fashion side has evolved. So the original Gorpcore customer in that space, and this is not my area of specialization, but that person might be different now in a fashion context because that trend moves quicker.
Right.
So the identification of on-ramps and kind of solving for that and skating where the puck is going is super challenging. So I have a lot of empathy for folks who were just trying to get it right. So you know, we've all seen things that don't seem like they hit. And it was probably, I want to believe optimistically, that things went through multiple rounds and they went through like really stark debates about like, is this the right approach? I want to believe that's the case because that makes me feel better about what we ultimately see, even if it isn't right or if it doesn't hit.
Speaking of the Advil campaign.
Oh, okay. I was like, what are you about to say to me?
Something you did in 2023.
I was waiting for it. Yeah. I know there was a lot of commentators on that. And I thought there's some like really good discussion about the people were talking about, honestly, like the efficacy of the message itself. Like, is this not even,
did it work?
Yes.
Probably. Right. It probably did.
Like, is this, does it work?
We'll link to this in the show notes for people who aren't familiar with what we're talking about right now.
And it's like, is it safe? Is another thing, right? Like, and so there's like that element of it too. But then when you zoom out from a 10,000 foot view and you look at the people who were speaking about the Advil campaign, I'm not going to like name names or say like good or bad, but the people who were saying, if you look at their audience, if somebody's speaking to an early stage runner, somebody who's approaching the thing, I think a lot of interesting critique around it was people being like, hey, you do realize that people are going to listen to you and take that as law. And they don't necessarily have the filter built in of personal experience or a community that can guide them with an alternative opinion.
Yeah, so like what's the role of an influencer in like making ethical decisions, right? So what we're talking about is, I think in April, Advil rolled out a campaign. There were 3 notable influencers that have between 50 and 200,000 followers that promoted the use of Advil as their secret weapon this training cycle.
Intra.
Like, I can't finish my workout unless I take Advil. Like, this was a part of the copy that was presented in the campaign. And I was pretty vocal about this is horseshit. And this is like really unethical and bad. And I had a conversation with one of the people who posted because I took a screenshot of what was posted. I cut her name off of it so she wouldn't get personally attacked. And I posted it on Twitter and it got like hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah.
And
how'd the conversation go?
So she messaged me and was like, I can't do anything else today. This is all I've been thinking about. This is what, like, I can't believe that people think that I'm giving bad advice. And this is giving me anxiety that, like, you're saying these things about me.
Yeah.
And I was like, please take it down. I can't remember if she asked me to take it down or not, but I was like, I didn't put your name on it, first of all. Second of all, actions have consequences. You can't just call, like, you can't do cancel culture. I'm like, no, this is taking responsibility for your actions. And accountability for your actions in something that can cause, like, liver problems if you do it, you know, more than acutely.
Yeah.
And these are non-medical professionals giving what's effectively medical advice. And it's an example of, like, again, did the brand or did the agency think that this was going to be the response and then say, holy shit, the earned media exposure, and now everyone's like...
I hope not, right? Because I want to hope that they are not banking on the negative press to be like a reason that Advil's in the conversation around it. Like,
we're still talking about it, though.
Yeah, we're talking about it right now.
It's 3 months later.
Yeah. And yeah, I totally forgot it was like that recent. But yeah, it is one of those things that does give me pause. And I feel very fortunate that, like, I don't work in that
Right, your
category.
brand is shoes and apparel and
packs.
Moving.
Right, and it's centered around the activity and it's mission-based, and it's not focused on growth into new categories. And I don't know how I would do that. Like, in the same way that, you know, a supplement company can come out of left field, right? Or, you know, whatever nutrition, hydration product can come out of left field. And the goal for a brand like that is growing as quickly as possible in specific verticals and utilizing, or some of them utilize that influencer category because it might be a more cost-effective solution for their messaging. And it gets pretty dicey about like then you get into like the larger conversation around like what is not an FDA regulated product, and that as well.
Right.
I don't know. It is very complex and like makes my head spin for sure.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And then it's like, what's the role of an influencer, and how do you balance the ethics, and where are the blurred lines? Like I said, I'm quitting my job and relying on sponsorship and partnerships and some consulting work. And like, I've always had the privilege of having a W-2 that, pays my bills.
Right.
And I have had the privilege of saying no to a lot of things that I've always wondered of, like, well, what if I needed that $10,000?
True. Very true. I guess maybe this is just firing from the hip, and this could be wrong, and I hope this isn't for the sake of what I'm about to say. So I feel like our prevalence of influencers came about by telling a story from a lifestyle perspective, and how somebody in their regular daily use utilizes certain things, whether like goods, services, or whatever, right? And it was all framed under this, like, under the lifestyle side of things, whether it was a day in the life or whether it was something more like episodic, get ready with me's or whatever. But so that's the thing that those people perfected, and that's why it became popular, right? There's definitely a kernel of truth to that. And now, since you were saying like everyone's an influencer, everybody has the ability to influence. I guess maybe that's like
it's a better way to say it.
Phrasing I'd probably land on. It's like everybody has the ability to do it because of the platforms that we now have. But I think people are getting smarter, let alone, right? People have to mark that something's a paid ad, right? So that's like a level of consumer protection.
That doesn't happen.
Doesn't always happen. But
also, there are a bunch of rules that like most people don't even know exist.
That's true. Yeah. And like there is, but I do think that we're seeing, maybe backlash is not the wrong way to put it out there, but I think we're seeing an evolution of things because it's becoming more obvious that these moments are not authentically within the lifestyle.
So how do you break through that as a brand or as somebody doing the partnerships?
To work with somebody in an influence perspective?
Yeah, to have an impact.
Yeah. I would say that it's about finding common ground, and like you can view an influencer potentially in the same way you'd view a partnership between two brands, or like an athlete, right? These are entities that are coming together for like mutual benefit.
Yep.
And I don't know. I would love to think from a partnership perspective, you're like, would these people get coffee together?
Yeah.
Even if they're brands, right? Like the idea of, I don't know, just throwing something out of left field. Like
Native and Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. You're like, and that one's a head scratcher. Right. So that one might need to be explained more or like blown out in a way for you to like, for it to jam down your throat.
Yeah.
The
Deodorant and coffee.
Right. Like the native deodorant and Girl Scout cookies, native deodorant and Doritos, right? Like all of the different things they do versus like an apparel brand and footwear brand working together.
Right.
Like, would they do that? And it even comes down to like when Hoka and Free People were doing things together, people were like, oh, that works because the design language, the color, the way it's shot, like the ultimate demographic that they're trying to reach is similar. So if you view an influencer in that way, and you'd be like, oh, this person kind of fits within the canon, whether it's visually or from a mission basis or, some other intangible that I don't even know right now. Maybe that's how it starts. And then something I know you've mentioned before on other podcasts that I definitely believe in as well is like the longevity of relationship.
Totally.
Right? Because if someone's doing a drop in the bucket and just like comes in off the top rope with like link in bio,
right.
What are we doing?
So I had a conversation today with Pillar Performance, who is a sports nutrition brand that makes magnesium and omegas and creatine, which I'm super hot on right now. And shout out to Gus, my contact at the brand. He was like, we generally don't like to evaluate partnerships in the first 6 weeks because
it's impossible.
How do you know? Like almost nobody is going to, have a windfall of coupon code uses. And it's more about the long tail, as you said, and the storytelling. And I like to think of it as like, would I go and work for the brand? That's my barrier or my basis of like, do I want to put my name behind
from
this?
The creator side?
Yeah,
I like
totally.
That. I really like that.
One of the first episodes I recorded on this podcast that'll be released soon is with the two founders of a brand called Live Cushy, and they're building a better for you skincare brand. So think like better for you body glide, better for you deodorant, better for you whatever. And I was like, I want to have a like position in this company. Like I want to have a vested interest in promoting this all the time, let alone like on an ad read. I want to always be thinking about this because I believe so strongly in what they're doing, which is like we're putting shit onto our bodies constantly.
Sure.
Aluminum in deodorant, you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so like I love aligning with the brands that I want to go above and beyond in a partnership standpoint versus like just checking the box on a bare minimum. So maybe my threshold is like, would I do it for free for them? Or like, would I do more? Would I talk about it? Or am I just being bought? Is my audience just being bought because they're offering to write a check? Again, like I've always come from a position of privilege of like, this is not how I put food on my table.
I can do this.
I can. Yeah. So I'm curious, like how I will evolve. Like I hope I will stay true to my morals and moral compass with that. I assume I will. Yeah. But it's a perspective I've never had before.
Yeah. Well, to your point about like landmark moments, I think about with like the Salomon lore the Rihanna Super Bowl incident, right? Where she was like in the all red, had, I will say, one of the best Super Bowl performances I've ever seen, just independent, because I was working for a different brand at the time. So I'm not biased, but she had on the red Maison Margiela collabs. And the funniest thing I saw afterwards was, I think it was Scott Mellon, the global brand director, reposted one of the headlines that was like behind the shoe of the Super Bowl. And I think he reposted it and said she paid full price. Just to say, like,
to my point,
right? Yeah, like her stylist like thought that was an awesome shoe. It looked really good. It fit the aesthetic, and she was a customer first, and that's arguably why it turned heads the way it was. Because I think in the way that the critique culture of influencing is really flourishing right now. Right, like a lot of people are becoming influencers by critiquing influencers, which is wild that we're in this meta space. But the critiques that are being made is like people are quick to poke holes in, you know, Tate McRae performs at the NHL All-Star game. Like,
tough
what was
to
she
throw
wearing?
Stones in a glass house. Yeah.
But it's like, oh, who gave her that outfit?
Right.
Is like one of the first questions instead of like, oh, her stylist picked it out. Right. So I think if there's currently an inherent pessimism around the decisions that people with influence are making, then it evolves the way that those people connect with their audience. I don't know exactly what's on the other side of it.
But it's always around trust. Trust is the ground floor of everything. Yeah. We could do this for hours.
I'm sorry.
I've been like watching the clock. I was like, wow, we cleared an hour a while ago. I would be remiss to not ask you to promote your own stuff. So you have a podcast, you have a newsletter. Why did you start all of that?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Yeah, I started something called Small Brand Mentality, and the name was kind of in flux a little bit until it finally became to be. When I was at Tracksmith, towards the end of my time there, something I wanted to do to challenge myself a little bit more was to have my head on a swivel for what's going on in the running industry. And what I found to be maybe a little bit back to my academia roots was like, I should be able to do a case study on something I see. And instead of just having an opinion of like, I like that or I don't like that, why? So trying to dissect it, understand the merits, understand the opportunities as I got to see it, because even if I'm missing a piece, what I'm observing is valid in some context, right? So I started doing those just like on my own before this existed. And after joining Salomon and thinking like, hey, there is an immense responsibility that I feel in this brand to the community and trail. There's an immense responsibility I feel to everybody at Salomon approaching road and gravel and like the general brand.
We didn't even get into the gravel piece.
I know.
That's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But so with that like immense responsibility, I'm like, I need to be on and I need to be observing. Yeah. So I started doing case studies again as I saw things that came up, whether it was like a product launch, an experiential, whatever, or just generally what I'm observing, and putting pen to paper a little bit more. And that's like the written side of things on Substack.
Gotta get you on Beehive.
You're a Beehive guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then the podcast side was just a way to have conversations with some of those people who are kind of at the crux of that decision making. The naming convention, to make a long story short, was like, I realized going from a small brand to a large brand, what I took for granted, and like the way people are
scrappiness, the just fucking do it attitude.
Right. And they're always thinking about like what the next thing is. And not to say that big brands don't do that.
There's less urgency often.
And there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of like legacy opinions from the outside looking in. So there's a ton of reasons why big brands may move slower. But I think I gravitate towards the decision making of like what's going to connect with somebody in this shared modality. Yeah. So that's what small brand mentality is around, like the minds of thinking small and then acting big, I guess you could say. So there's small brand mentality at a brand like Salomon, Nike, Adidas, on. But that's, trying to make the elevator pitch shorter and shorter, but I have a hard time.
And you've been doing some mentoring as well.
Oh, yeah. That's been super fun. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yes, I started doing this when I moved over to Salomon a few months after I started. I think August was the first time I did it in 2024. And it's like twice a week during my lunch hour. I just open up time for anyone to schedule a chat. My impetus for this is like every time that I've tried to change things, I feel like people have taken a chance on me and I want to pay that forward for sure. The other thing that is a motivator there is a lot of people, when you ask for advice on how to move around, people just say like right place, right time. And I've heard the same thing and it's very not helpful. Because if you want to dissect that, it's right place, right time to meet the person in the moment.
Right.
But like, what do I say? How do I prepare? How do I even get their attention? Are things that I think could be helpful just to help people feel prepared.
Yep.
So I've talked to people in those mentoring conversations who are currently in the industry and they want to make a jump, either like to a different team or make a leap in their career journey. There are people who want to break into the industry. There are people who want to start businesses for the first time, which has been really cool. And I will proclaim to know none of the answers, but if I can help somebody think more critically about themselves and we can stay in touch, hopefully that leads to them ultimately getting the gig they want. And that would be really cool to see.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Drew, this has been a blast. Where can we find you on your corner of the internet?
So I'm on Instagram. It's my last name, HARTMAN.io. That's my IG. And then for Small Brand Mentality, I'm on Substack. I'm on podcast platforms. I have my own website that I'm currently redoing. People have found it and told me that it's live, which like, give me a week or two and I'll get it back up.
Well, this will go in July probably, cool. So it'll be live.
Hey, there you go.
Check it out. What's the website?
It's just drewhartman.com.
There we go. It looks great.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Drew, this has been a blast, and we'll see you out there.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there. This show is produced by Dylan Delaney of Delaney Video LLC with musical composition by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound and managed overall by Emily Holland of Wild Poppy Creative.